Okay, it is 1:10, Sam. I'm going to hand it over to you and we'll have you get this going.
Thank you, EO Melby. Good afternoon, everyone. Samantha Gambles-Farr here. Thank you for joining us for our September Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee meeting. I am calling the meeting to order at 1:10 p.m. We will start off. We will start off with agenda item 1. The meeting's been called to order, and we will proceed with roll call at this time. Myself, Samantha Gambles-Farr, present. Co-chair, Dr. Edward Ray.
Present.
Dr. Andrea Espinoza.
Present.
Nurse practitioner Jan Johnson Griffin. Okay. I think she's trying to say present. She's on her phone. We'll come back.
She is present. She's trying to connect on phone.
Okay. Nurse practitioner Kevin Maxwell.
Present.
Nurse practitioner Sally Pham. Are you having problems now, Sally?
Sam, it's showing that you're on mute. Sally, are you able to come off mute?
She's having problems. She's present, however.
Yeah.
And
we do have a
public
present,
member.
just real quick, before you go on, Sam. So Sally, Dr. Espinosa made mention that she had to shut down her entire computer and restart. That may be an option that you want to choose. I know that Jan has already attempted that, but there was some installation that needed to occur for some WebEx updates for hers to work appropriately. So if you want to, Sally, we do have you counted as present, but if you want to continue to troubleshoot, you can log off right now, restart your computer, come back in, and we'll try to do that. And we'll touch bases with you when you come back in.
Okay, thank you. And public member Betha Schnell.
Present.
Perfect, thank you so much. We have met our requirement for establishment of quorum. Moving on, we will do agenda item 2. Moderator, please take it away.
Good afternoon. This is the BRN moderator. I will be moderating the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature, also known as Slido, or now known as Slido. When the committee reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," in the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. I will not give a warning as your time approaches. I will mute your microphone and will announce that your time has exceeded the time allotted. I will then proceed to the next member of the public who has a comment. We will also query our in-person location located in BRN HQ. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. When your turn comes, you will be prompted to unmute. If your question can be answered, the committee will respond accordingly. When making your comment, speak about anything you believe is important for the members to know. Remember, committee members cannot address any item not on the agenda. Items not on the agenda at that moment, items that you would like to add to a future meeting, or items that will be discussed later on the agenda will be discussed at their correct times during the meeting. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when committee members or BRN staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will mute your microphone automatically.
Thank you,
Sally,
moderator.
Able to speak?
Can you guys hear me?
Ooh, who is that?
That's
Sally Pham.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. We might even have Jan. Jan, *67 or star, is it *67? There you go.
Should be able to hear me now.
Yes, ma'am.
Jan, will you silence your computer so we don't have a double echo? Because I think it might be picking up a little bit. It's kind of weird. I only heard it when you talked on your phone. Thank you. I'm glad you could join us. Okay. Thank you so much, moderator. We are going to be moving on to agenda item 3.0, public comments for items not currently on the agenda.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. Sorry, I hear something in my ears, but
That's Jan's phone, I think, needs to be muted again, I think.
okay, hold on. Okay, now let's try. Okay, I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Gamble Spar, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. Do we have any requests for comments in BRNHQ?
Hi, Mark. We don't have any public participants in the meeting.
Thank you. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Okay, we are moving right along to agenda item 4.0, to review and vote on whether to approve the previous meetings minutes from March 18th, 2025. I will first open it up to my fellow committee members. If no one has any corrections or any comments, I would welcome a first and a second.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
I second.
Okay. Having a first and a second, moderator, please open it to public comments, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment."
I have a question. And just for after you're done with that, I'm sorry.
Committee Chair Gamble Spar, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window after her question?
Yes,
Okay, I
yes,
noticed
please.
something just real quickly, and it's not a big deal, but on the minutes, it shows motion by Ray to approve September 24th, 2024 minutes. These were minutes from, I thought, March 18, 25. That's all.
But those minutes are the minutes looking at today to approve are for the March
Right.
18th meeting. At the March 18th meeting, you considered the September 2024 minutes.
Okay, thank you,
Correct.
So yeah, I think it's correct.
thank you, sorry.
Okay, now am I good to close?
Yes, please, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we need to vote. We're not quite ready for 5 yet. We haven't had a vote. So, yay for Samantha Gambles Farr. Dr. Ray,
Yes.
Dr. Espinoza,
Yes,
Jan Johnson Griffin,
Just giving a thumbs up. Are you not able to get on your microphone? Okay. Still
Okay.
can't hear.
Okay, Sally Pham,
Yes.
okay, Kevin Maxwell,
Yes.
and Betha Schnell.
Yes.
Thank you. We have passed the minutes from March and moving on to agenda item 5.0. We will now receive a report from our executive officer, Loretta Melby. This is an information only action item. E.O. Melby, I yield to you. Did we lose her?
I don't see her in our list of panelists.
Yeah, I just saw her. She disappeared. No, she's
Wow.
there. She's there. I see her.
Oh, there she is. Lori,
Does she need
are
to
you
be
there?
does she need to be elevated? Maybe she
No,
can't
she's
unmute
there.
herself.
I think it's more of the technical problems that we are having.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay, let's give her a couple of minutes just to see if she can log off and log back on. And if not, then we could take a vote to move on to the next agenda item if E.O. Melby is unable to get in queue for 5, just so we can keep the meeting moving along.
Hi,
But
Sam.
we'll
It's
give her a
Macaulay.
couple minutes.
Uh,
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Lori lost everything, so she's restarting her computer, and then she should be
Okay.
able to pop back on. So yeah, just a couple minutes.
Yeah, we'll give her a couple minutes.
Probably reorder the agenda if you want, and maybe do the meeting dates, because that doesn't necessarily need Lori. But again, I leave that up to you.
We'll give her just a couple more minutes. If she's unable to come on in like a minute or two, then we'll keep moving. Okay, it looks like EO Melby is still not on. I think she's still working on it.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Oh.
Are-
Yes,
It sounds
Yeah.
okay. Awesome. So
yes, we can hear you.
I've restarted my computer. I'm trying to get on via online, but I have been able to join by my phone. So I'm not sure what happened, and now I am echoing. 1 second. Okay, it looks like we're up and working right now, and I'm on via the computer. So are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool, and I will get my video started in just 1 second. Okay. So 5.0 information only on on my report for things that have affected nurse practitioners. I'm going to be a little discombobulated as we move through this right now. Sorry about that because of the technical issues. So there are not a lot of updates right now. We're in a pretty quiet period. We've been watching legislation kind of move. Most are with the governor for signature, and we will await signature by October 12th. Other than that, there has not been a lot of updates that are directly affecting at this point the practice of nurse practitioners. So as we get more, we will be able to provide more, but I do want to offer up the opportunity right now to see if there's anybody that has any questions around things that maybe have come up around nurse practitioner practice that affect the board that we would like to clarify, that of course that are not specified in a different agenda item.
Lori, I had
Yeah.
a quick question. Could you explain, maybe for those of us who aren't as in tune with the legislative process, what exactly sunset means, and just very briefly, like basically what that means on the state level?
So we actually have that, I believe, as an upcoming agenda item. So let me just make sure that I'm not speaking over that. So that'll be agenda item 6.0. That'll be our next agenda item. And I'll go into depth on the sunset review process and how that.
Oh, gotcha.
Works. Yep.
Okay, I thought we were on that item. I apologize. Never mind.
Not yet. No, this is just for this legislative year. Next legislative year is our sunset. That's going to be a fun one.
Can't wait to learn all about it.
Sounds great. Okay, anything else from the committee? No? Okay, this is information only. Sorry, it wasn't the best update that I've ever given. Thank you guys for bearing with me, and we will go out to public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you'll have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Gamble-Spar, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Moving right along, we are now at agenda item 6.0, information only regarding the overview of the 2026 BRN sunset review process. I'll be turning this over to our executive officer once again, EO Melby.
Thank you. And this is the one where I hope to answer all of your questions, Dr. Ray, so keep them coming. So at this point, we received 3 years ago, we received a 4-year extension to our board. And so I'll start and just kind of explain the difference between our 9-member board and the staff of the Board of Registered Nursing. So the 9-member board is a policy setting board. It is protected in statute. However, that statute expires at the will of the legislator. And so when they put it to expire January 1, 2027. And so if next year, our bill, sorry, let me restart. Typically, a bill is introduced in January, February, by the chair of the Assembly Business Professions Committee or the chair of the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee to reestablish our board and extend, not reestablish, but to extend our sunset for up to 4 years. That's the norm that typically happens with that. So that is a process that starts about 6 months prior to that. So we get an email from legislative staff about October of each year, September, October. We actually got it in August this year, with a list of questions that go out to our board that they have to be responded to. The review process starts with that. So we will respond to that. We will write and answer each question and provide a lot of statistical data. That data and that report must be reviewed and approved by our board. So we do plan to post that document in October for our nurse practice board committee, where the members of that committee should start their review process of that report, give us any suggestions. We did in the August board meeting ask for any input from our board members if there's anything that they wanted to include. And then we're giving this background at each one of our advisory committees. Once that report is approved by the board in November, and I'm saying that preemptively because I don't want to hold a special meeting in December to get board approval. I'm hoping everything goes smooth and it gets approved in November. We will turn that report in to the legislative staff in January. They will start that review process. If you notice on page 18 of the materials, there's a 2022 sunset review report. That is the report that I'm referencing. It will be updated for this year. What then happens next is you'll see a March 18th, 2022 background paper. That background paper, we expect a new one to come from the staff on a response to our report. And then they will set a hearing. Typically, it is a single hearing. That hearing will be scheduled in advance. People can show up in person. They can also attend virtually and watch. They do typically provide either a call-in number or a virtual number to participate in public comment. And I will be there in person with our board president. During that hearing, the various legislators will come in and ask questions, and they'll say, you know, we've heard this, can you clarify? We've heard this, can you clarify? What are you doing about this? And then I sit there and answer those questions to the best of my ability with our board president. Once that is done, they take all that information back and they use that when writing that bill that will carry us through and extend us. And we're going, of course, for 4 years. They could take that information and hear that, you know, they think that we're absolutely egregious and there's nothing that we've done correctly, and they could choose to sunset our board. That's not going to happen because that's not accurate. We're doing amazing work, and I believe we've made huge strides over the last few years. I do anticipate a 4-year sunset. I do think they'll extend us for another 4 years. It has in the past where they extended us to 1 year. That was right when I first took this position. We came in, it was completely new executive staff as well as me being new. And they just wanted to really make sure that what was happening was going to be able to continue. And I think that we've done a stellar job to really show that that's occurred. With that, I believe we'll get a 4-year sunset. we bring a lot of information to the table based on public feedback, based on board staff feedback, saying, you know, these are items that we need to update or change or improve. And so in our sunset review report, we do make asks to update some statutory language to things that we think would be beneficial to run the board. In that same spirit, the public does the same thing. They reach out, lobbyists reach out, various stakeholders reach out, and they really provide a lot of input into what they think the BRN needs to do to serve California better. And once all that information is gathered, there are several conversations and amendments and changes of that bill from when it's first introduced to when it is signed in that become really our map for the next 4 years of what they would like us to do. So I'm looking forward to the sunset process. I always learn a lot when we're going through it. And I think that it is a really kind of a good time and a beneficial time for us to get that feedback. It is a lot of work, however, so you might, if you have a lot of reach out to our board staff, you might hear, you know, I'm focused on sunset. I'll get to that as soon as I can. We do intend to have the report written and complete and reviewed in October, so there might be a little bit of a breather in November. Hoping, we'll see, before we go into this. Now, to really kind of talk about what happens if we don't get our sunset date extended, which has only happened one time in the past. In that bill that happened in, I believe, 2010 or 2011, what occurred is there was some language that contradicted itself. When a bill goes to the governor for signing, the governor can't edit or amend. They have to either sign or veto. And so that governor did have to veto at that point. So our sunset was not extended. We did sunset at January of that year, and we needed to wait for the next legislative calendar to open up. We were immediately put back on with an urgency bill. We got majority vote and the board reinstated. What happens if we don't have that reinstatement is the 9-member policymaking board that is made up of 5 RNs and 4 public members ceases to exist. The work that the BRN staff does in licensing, education, enforcement activities does not cease to exist. That continues, but it doesn't continue as a board of registered nurse. It would most likely fall under to a bureau, and we would still fall under the Department of Consumer Affairs. So all of that continues. The other one, just to highlight, is my position. I'm appointed by the board. So if my 9-member board doesn't exist, I don't exist in this role either. So that would be a huge change that would occur as well. So hopefully with what is in the materials and what I've been able to explain, it's pretty clear. It was definitely a process I was not aware of prior to coming in and working for our board. I honestly, as an RN, didn't know there was a difference between the Board of Registered Nursing and the 9-member board as a licensee. So that was all new to me as I became more and more aware of what was kind of going on at the state level. So at that point, I'm going to open it up to the committee members if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or need any clarification.
E.L. Melby, thank you so much for that information. I have, prior to getting on this committee, I have watched the review of the sunset review report be done several times over the years. And it's always an interesting process to watch and to kind of be involved with and to read. So if you have not, even if you're a public, anybody on this call, if you've not had an opportunity to go back and read that process and kind of go back and look and even watch some of the archived meetings, it's a good process to know and understand as it relates to our profession. So thank you for that clarification and that explanation. And I
Thank you,
yield to
Sam.
anybody else who's on the committee.
Yeah, it's really important that we go through this process because it really gives we are here for the sole purpose of serving California, and we are fully just focused on protection of the public. this really gives the opportunity to assess that and whether or not we're doing that. That is, I think, fairly unique to our boards and bureaus and the ones that fall under the sunset review process. I came from private sector. That was not something that we had. Sometimes we had advisory committees or advisory meetings, you know, on an annual basis, but it was not as an in-depth of a review process that I've experienced going through the sunset. The other thing that is just different between private sector and this public sector role is in private sector, if I saw something as a leader that really needed to be amended or changed, I could just amend it or change it. I update a policy and procedure. I let people know I can hire who I want. That's kind of done. I don't have to justify anything. I just make it happen. In the state process with the sunset review and being really overseen by the legislators and getting that input, if I want to make changes, everything has to be done through regulation that's tied back to statute or statute that gets updated through the legislative process. So this is really a prime opportunity for us to really get some legislative changes to update our statute to really reflect where we need to go in the future.
Thanks for explaining that, Lori. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay, this is information only, so we don't need a motion and a second. So at that point, board moderator, we can open up for public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing it in the question box. I would like to make a comment. Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in I would like to make a comment. Committee Chair Gamble-Spar, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please, moderator. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. We are now to agenda item 7.0, discussion and possible action regarding our meeting dates for 2026. As per the background, we meet twice a year. They are open to the public and we adhere to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Within the packet, there were 2 dates that are set forward. The 2 dates were April 28th, 2026 and October 20th, 2026. With that being stated, I will open it up for discussion from committee members. If you guys think that those dates are okay, if there's any additional discussion that's needed, and or plus welcome a first and second if there's no issue with those 2 dates selection.
Sorry, can you repeat the dates?
April 28th, 2026 and October 20th, 2026. And those are Tuesdays, as we've been historically meeting on Tuesdays. So that stays pretty much in alignment with what we have been doing pretty closely. I think it got moved to October because, is that running into the sunset bill or no?
So what we did is we
No.
moved our board meetings.
Okay.
So
why.
previously we had board committee in January with a board meeting in February. What that did with bill introductions is it did not allow for our board to take positions on all the bills that came in front of us. And so when we adjusted the calendar, we moved to have a board committee in February with a board meeting in March. That would allow to meet all the bill introduction deadlines. We would know what kind of the scope of the bills are that affect BRN, and we'd be able to take appropriate kind of positions for that timing. So because we offset our board meetings by 1 month throughout the year, we did then have to adjust and change the positioning of our advisory committees. We then purposely tried to keep our advisory committee meeting about that same time. That's why we're aiming for April, because we want to make sure that all the bills that are introduced that affect nurse midwives as well as nurse practitioners, et cetera, are able to be heard, and you guys can provide input from the advisory committee perspective. So that's why we have the August one. And then it really just kind of fell in sync with, that's a month that we don't have a board meeting. So we're able to hold a committee meeting, because these committee meetings as well as our board meetings take a ton of staff time at BRN, preparation resources, as well as Department of Consumer Affairs, because they help us with the webcasting and streaming of our meetings and allowing us some space if we need it.
I'd like to move to adopt the 2 dates that were presented for the next 2 committee meetings.
I have a question. This is Dr. Espinosa, before we go on.
Yes, please.
Can I make that comment?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. One of the things that, so this year we had 2 or 3 meetings.
We had 2 meetings. We had one in March, and now we're having this one in September.
Okay. And one of the things that I would like to bring up is that it feels like not that I liked attending meetings, but the meetings are pretty distant from each other, which is okay with me. But I think that the subcommittees that have been meeting, and when it comes back with questions or any things that we need to vote on, I don't know how many times the subcommittees met this year, but I feel that other than those that are on those subcommittees, I feel that I myself don't feel very connected as to what's going on or any input when those subcommittees are coming in. I know that I was one of the people that suggested the subcommittees to discuss trends and anything that needed to be discussed urgently. However, it seems like there are some stuff that are pretty important are being covered in those subcommittees. And I would like to see, in my opinion, either a rotation through that, except for the chair, rotation for everyone to have that opportunity to be on those subcommittees through the year. And so that's what I like, in my opinion, and like to see happen.
Eo,
So just
Melby,
for
would
some
you like to
clarific-
discuss? Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you to clarify the rationale for the
That's
subcommittees.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes, statutorily, we are required to meet twice a year. I can add an additional advisory committee meeting as needed. You saw us do that when we were trying to get AB 890 implemented. We had a lot of extra meetings. There hasn't been a lot of need for extra committee meetings for nurse practitioner advisory committee throughout the year. It's been fairly kind of status quo and pretty quiet. I might have jinxed us coming up when it comes towards looking at our Nurse Practice Act. Now, is there stuff going on that is, affecting like CDPH and privileging and stuff? Yes, that's going on. That's outside of our jurisdiction. Is there maybe stuff going on insurance wise or billing wise? Probably is. That's outside of our jurisdiction. So those things that are happening out there are still not something that we should pull a meeting together to discuss, because it's not within our jurisdiction. It's not within our Nurse Practice Act. When we're looking at subcommittees, I do see, Dr. Espinosa, that you are not assigned to a subcommittee. However, everybody else is. So right now we could look at, if that's something that you're interested in, when we get to the subcommittee section, if there is something that you would like to work on, Dr. Espinosa, as maybe your own subcommittee, where if you want to, you can work with board staff, myself, Reza, and anybody to work on something, and we can have some one-on-ones with you throughout the year. There is nothing limiting to that, and we could absolutely give you a focus if you're feeling that you don't have a lot of focus right now on working through this. That can absolutely happen. We'll address that when we get to the subcommittee report outs. In the meantime, we do have 3 established subcommittees. They are titled the Transition to Practice, the 104, and Discipline. Those titles do not mean anything. You guys can assign specific work to those subcommittees at any point in that discussion when we're in our subcommittee report out area. You could say, you know, one of our agenda items is IV hydration. And you could say, you know what, I think there needs to be more work on that. The transition to practice is pretty much set and done. With that subcommittee, Dr. Ray and Jan Johnson Griffith, that's something you would be considered is kind of doing a deep dive into IV hydration. Absolutely something that you guys can do. And so don't be limited by the title of the subcommittee because the 103 transition to practice is done. There's nothing more that's really kind of going on that needs attention specific to that topic. So you are free to meet and discuss other things. The 104 subcommittee, that 104, the application, all the regulations, that stuff's been done for a few years. And we're working right now just to see how implementation come January 1 of 2026, when we open up that application and we start to have that that group come through and be recognized and put on our licensing lookup that they're able to practice in that independent way. Discipline kind of continues. That's our most active subcommittee right now. And that is with Sally and Sam. They do meet on regular basis. They will report out and let you guys know what that looks like. And then we always have a standing agenda item that they go into more depth and provide additional details on that in our meetings. So Dr. Espinosa, if there comes a time where we do need an additional meeting, we absolutely can. But I think really with the work of the subcommittee and you saying that you don't have a specific focus right now, that's something we can address in our upcoming agenda item, where we can create a subcommittee that you're able to work from and that we're able to work with you on.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Sam, you're on mute.
Thank you. We had a
Thank you.
first from Dr. Ray. Is there a second?
And that is for accepting of the proposed
Accepting of the
meeting
dates of April 28th,
I
2026 and October 20th. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you, Dr.
Espinosa.
Espinosa.
Okay, having a first and a second, I'm going to ask the moderator to now open it for public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for a comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you'll have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Gamble Spar, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. We will now take it to a vote. Samantha Gambles Farr, aye. Dr. Edward Ray,
Aye.
Dr. Espinosa,
Yes.
Jan Johnson Griffin, oh, sorry, I missed your thumbs up. Sorry, the screen wasn't up. Kevin Maxwell.
Jan, thumbs up.
Yes. Okay. Sally Pham
Yes.
and Betha Schnell.
Yes.
Thank you. And it has all passed, and so we will be meeting on April 28th, 2026 and October 20th, 2026. Moving on to our next agenda item, 8.0, we will have a discussion and possible action regarding election of the chair and vice chair positions.
Got to turn
I
that
will
over to
turn it
me.
over to you, Eo.
Yep, it is. You are temporarily no longer the chair, Sam. Just we'll see how this goes. So at this point, on an annual basis, we do ask that our advisory committees take consideration of the chair and vice chair roles. Currently, Sam and Dr. Ray serve as chair and vice chair. That is something that can continue. However, it does not have to. We will pause for a moment right now to really discuss the chair position. So with the chair position, that is something that Samantha has filled for the last few years. She can continue if she chooses to, and you guys nominate her too. She can nominate herself, or another person can nominate her, or another person. And so at this point, we will pause. We will ask for input from the committee on who they would like to see as the chair for the Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee.
It's Kevin Maxwell.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm very happy with the current leadership, and they've both done an amazing job leading us through these past few years. And I hope to see them both continue in their roles.
Thank you. And then we'll hear from Betha real quick.
Yes, I wanted to be the first to thank them both as well, and to nominate Samantha as our to continue in her role.
Samantha, are you willing to accept that nomination?
Thank you, guys. Yes, I'm willing to accept. However, I will say that if there's anybody else who wants to take this position, please do not feel the need to not speak up. I am more than willing to step aside so that someone else can take leadership opportunity as well. So I just want to make sure that I state that as well. So I don't feel that the work that I do needs to be at, as your chair, but I appreciate all the kind words just the same. So it's still open if you're just yearning for it.
It is. We haven't taken a vote yet. So you've been nominated. Is there anybody else that has any other nomination or consideration for chair position? Okay, we will now address the vice chair position. Dr. Kevin Maxwell did mention that he would like Dr. Ray to continue in that role. Is there anybody else that has a nomination or a thought before I check with Dr. Ray to see if that's something that he wants to continue? Okay, well, it's up to you, Dr. Ray. Is that something that you would consider to continue?
Yeah, I would gladly accept that nomination, but I also want to echo what Sam said in that it's been great, but I would gladly step aside if anybody wants to, take it on for the next year or so. But happy to serve and happy to continue if there's no one else interested at this point.
Okay, so it looks like we do have a nomination for Sam as chair and Dr. Ray to continue as vice chair. Are there any other nominations that we should consider at this point before we go to a motion in a second? Okay, so what we'll need at this point is a motion to appoint Sam as chair and Dr. Ray as vice chair for the next year for the Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee. And then I would need a second for that as well.
I'll make a motion to start.
Okay, just say so moved.
So moved.
Thank you. If we can get a second.
I second.
Betha beat you, Sally. So we'll get Betha on the second there. And at this point, we'll open it up to public comment, please. Board moderator.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in the request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate that would like to make a comment by typing it in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give reminders as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." For EO Melby, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. And at this point, I'll take it to a roll call vote. Dr. Espinosa.
Yes.
Thank you. Betha?
Yes.
Dr. Ray?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Sally?
Yes.
Samantha?
Yes.
And Jan? Are you, got a thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you for that. So we do have a vote. Sam, I'm turning it back over to you as you maintain your chair position. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. We are now moving on to agenda item 9.0 regarding the reports for the subcommittees related to the business and profession codes, transition to practice, discipline, and 104 MPs. I think I will start first with we'll start with the first two, which you had alluded to, E.O. Melby. We do have a transition to practice subcommittee that Dr. Ray and Jan serve on. I just wanted to give opportunity for you guys to give any feedback or as if you guys have had any meetings or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that Macaulay has been meeting with us periodically to just check in and see if we have any items to bring up for future committee meetings. And we haven't really identified anything substantial to raise. We're just kind of keeping an eye on any sort of changes in legislation, anything coming out of the state government that might affect this committee as it relates to transition to practice. And so far, it's been pretty quiet.
Thank you, Jan. I know you're on the call. I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to add. No, okay. Thank you. All right. Next is, yes.
Dr. Espinosa.
Okay.
Yeah, for a transition of practice. So what kinds of things have changed from the committee other than what you brought up? Anything else more recently that has changed the transition of practice? I know that the what do you call the folks that have been practicing for many years, they were able to not have to go through the transition to practice, correct?
No, that's not correct. So
Okay.
there has not been any regulatory changes or changes from our board that have affected the transition to practice. There were changes that we discussed in our last our last nurse practitioner advisory committee, and I believe we allowed for some agenda focus in this committee as well, when we will kind of talk about the changes around the agenda item 10, I believe. And then I think that might be the one, just agenda item 10. And so when we get to agenda item 10, we can talk about some of the attestation requirements and the stuff that are specified within 2737.103A, and you can follow that. When there was the last legislative session, there were some updates that did make changes to the transition of practice. Those changes were not BRN led, and they were not something that we had to create in regulations for that to occur. When that bill was passed, it created new statutory language, and statutory language will always supersede regulatory language. And so those items that were changed by the legislator through that process is what we do have to follow going forward. So we do not have input on that in this context. When it was going through, our board was able to take positions of support or oppose. They were able to offer suggestions if they wanted to support with amends or oppose unless amended. They were able to utilize that legislative session to go through and provide that input. And so that is done, and our board has no more input into the statute that is there, absent going back out through another bill introduction process and going through another legislative session.
So where would I see those legislature changes? Where would I find that for this one?
So there was a bill that covered that on our website. We do have a section that talks about what occurred in the last legislative year. So I'm going to pull that up and then I will screen share so that our public will be able to kind of look at that. And so let me screen share here. So I'm going to take this away from our board moderator and make it happen here. So what you guys will see, make sure that it's showing up, is you see our landing page here. What I always do just for ease is go up into the right-hand corner and type in what I want. And so I will type in legislation and search, and then you'll see the 2024 legislative updates right at the top under that search. In here, our Chief of Legislation, Marissa Clark, updates this and goes through the entire process. And these are all the bills that affected us. It is separated between Assembly and Senate, and it's separated by year. And so you would be able to go in and look at the bill specifically to find out what was changed. Right here, it is a Senate Bill 1451 put forward by Ashby, Professions and Vocations. You can click on this. You can link directly to it. It will then pop up. And what you're going to see here is, I always click into here as today's law as amended, and then scroll through and you're able to read the law. If you want this to, if you want to see like what it was when you first, when you first went in and what was it like when it was introduced, right? And so you're able to look at the different, sorry, I'm trying to move a box here. So if you can see where here, I can click down and you can see when the bill was introduced on February 16th, 2024, you can click and say, what did this bill look like when it was first introduced? And it will take you to that. And you're able to then look on what it looked like when it was actually chaptered and became effective. In that process, you would be able to see all of the changes that occurred. And so this is where we keep it updated. But when this bill is actually chaptered and it is implemented, you find it in our Nurse Practice Act. And so what you're going to see then is if you pull up our Nurse Practice Act, which let me back out of here a bit and go to our homepage. And so if you go into our homepage, you'll see that all of these updates are right here in our Nurse Practice Act. You can enter that and then you'll go into the Advanced Practice Registered Nurse, which is Article 8.5. And it does have all of the current statutory language where there were changes that were made. And that is something that we, again, cannot amend or alter in any way now that it is passed. And we can only write regulations to update And currently that is not something that has been identified by the transition and practice subcommittee that we need to do an update, other than going through and repealing some of the language that are direct conflict at this point from the updates. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing. Hopefully you're
Thank you.
able to kind of see that and take a look at that.
Yes, very helpful.
And then we will go more in depth to the transition to practice, the attestation, et cetera, when we get to that next agenda item.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, so we finished with the transition to practice. The 104 MPs, Kevin and Betha, wanted to give you guys opportunity to discuss any meetings, actions, discussions you guys have had as a subcommittee.
I'm happy to address that if Beth is okay with that.
Sure, I can add in as you speak.
All right. I think when we met, we came up with, a series of 3 questions about the changes to that we noticed. And I think a lot of it had to do with implementation and how things would work out in reality. Thank you, Lori, for providing us responses to those. As far as like the attestation, is that just a blanket attestation, or maybe this is for item 10 as well, but would it be possible to add the subsections 3 and 4 that describe what shows up on this attestation, so that the person signing, I kind of doubt that the physicians or the nurse practitioner are going to be reading regulatory language. And so I was hoping that maybe this would be reassuring to them, so they knew exactly what they were signing. I've never personally seen one of these attestations, so maybe it's already there. But that
Yes,
was our first question.
We have an update that is still future on our agenda item to talk about the changes to the attestation. The language that you're referencing was the updated language that talks about kind of the responsibility of the attester. That is something that we did update with our application process. And so the attester will read that language prior to going in and submitting their attestation for it. So they will be very aware of what the updated statutory language shows.
Yeah. And then I think for me, I believe this is the second question about the plans of referral and what that would look like in practice and how that would be carried out. It seems like it would be rather daunting, or it would just be incredibly vague. I guess vague would be easier, just in the same way that our standardized procedures are written. But any insight you can provide on how that would actually be done, or do we have to wait until we actually have 104 NPs and see where the problems come up? Because if I imagine that a lot of them are going to be making quite a few referrals, and just how much detail needs to go into that prior was another question we had.
So there's nothing that is set forth in our statute or regulation that requires the board to define that. And so the statute didn't say for the board to establish guidelines on what that referral process looks like. So we did not do that. If we see something coming up that wasn't very clear and some clarification needs to occur, we always could consider pursuing regulation. But additionally, any organization could contact an author and have that added to statute through the legislative process if there is something that needed specific clarification. I don't know that any of that is really necessary right now, only because the practice of an NP is vast. And in order to kind of do an inclusive kind of guideline might be a difficult process to undertake, kind of like you said, pretty daunting. What I have heard through the grapevine that people are kind of using is the guidelines that we have up for standardized procedures. They really do cover all 11 areas that are pretty clear, and you guys are kind of used to working on that. It's not required, but it has been from some people something that they're using as a starting point or a jumping off point, just to kind of give them some kind of a guidance, because this is new for them. But honestly, I really think that your organizations would come in much more handy than us as a regulatory body as you manage through this. There is a lot of state by state comparison that could occur as well. So your national organization might be very helpful in aiding you guys as you're looking to set that up. But as of right now, we're not heavy-handed in that, and we really have no regulatory guidance around that because that wasn't written into law for us to do that.
I guess it would just be a shame if we reinvented standardized procedures and gave it a different name.
Right. So that's not something we want to do. Just like I said, what people have been doing is kind of looking at the standardized procedure and looking at that as a jump off point, that they don't want to do that, but they kind of want to make sure that when they're doing these referrals that they're kind of getting to the core of what's kind of needed to be documented. And some people just need kind of a map at some point, and then they could alter and change the way that they need to. Dr. Espinosa, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this one, and I think I remember this clearly, but does it say anywhere in the law about the referral or collaboration? Because I think the idea not so much is who you're going to refer or a standardized procedure, blah, blah, blah. I think that it's that, to me, it's more related to who do you collaborate with? Who will be your referral person and says, hey, because ultimately that's what you want to see, the nurse practitioners getting involved with other providers, including physicians. And in a way, those are your referral people. That's my referral people, are the people I collaborate every day, or, for opinions. And my feeling is that people, especially patients, appreciate, they know that you are collaborating with somebody else. And do you need to write that down? No, I think people know that. So if there's a guideline for people, what do they want? Do they want blah, blah, blah? Who do you collaborate with? Do you need to make it extensive? Probably not, but at least saying you have a list of collaborating people, blah, 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 period. And that changes and improves or decreases. But I think that the gist of the law wanted to have on the referrals is, do you have a collaborative team? That's all.
That's accurate. So when you look at the law, it says that the nurse practitioner shall consult and collaborate with other healing art providers based on the clinical condition of the patient to whom healthcare is provided. It does give some specific information as to when physician consultation shall be obtained, the emergent conditions, the problems that are not resolving, when the clinical findings are not consistent with the perspective, and then upon request of the patient. But then there also is a section under 4 that says the nurse practitioner shall establish a plan for referral of complex medical cases and emergencies to a physician or surgeon or other appropriate healing art providers, and that they have to identify that referral plan specific to their practice area and the referral criteria. And then our law does specifically state out, again, what kind of conditions and events occur around that. But what it doesn't state is what that plan needs to contain. And that's where Dr. Kevin Maxwell was kind of coming in, is like, is there any specific requirement around that? And no, there is not. That is individual. And so at that point, I see Sam's hand up and Betha's. And so we'll let Sam shine in, and then after Sam, we'll go to Betha.
Thank you. Well, I think that this definitely is somewhat already embedded in MP practice, because depending on what network you're with, whoever you're giving provide, I think that that gives some opportunity for people to work within whatever network that they have to help establish that referral network and that thread as well. But I think that there's something to be said about other states and comparing what their documentation and things look like, because we know that other states have this practice in place. And I think that that might be something useful for this subcommittee to actually look at, to see what documentation they're using, as far as I don't know if that's embedded in their laws or if that's something that they came up with, but I think that that might be something that might be worth looking into, to see if they have anything specifically as part of their law that they have to have as far as referrals. And if so, is that something that we could utilize in California that would be useful for our community and our providers as well, to make sure that we're, if it's already been invented, then why would we then need to reinvent the wheel all over again? So,
Agree, Sam. And if that is something that you guys are able to do from an organization standpoint that doesn't violate what our Nurse Practice Act sets up,
mhm,
unless there's something that is public safety kind of related that comes to us, I don't know that we need to include that in any kind of a law form or regulatory basis
right,
in our state.
right,
It would only be if that was kind of brought to our attention as something that was problematic and unclear.
mhm,
If it is decided that this section is unclear and it's something that you guys cannot follow or we cannot hold you accountable to, then at that point we would have to look at a regulatory process. But that's not an automatic, because in the language it didn't say the board shall create.
mhm. I think the other thing is, this is an opportunity for us to teach the nurse practitioners who are transitioning or moving into this role as 104 MPs. Once we gather that information, to give them useful tools, things that we have on our landing board, like we were doing before, giving them information. It's all about educating everybody, and so making sure that that information is available for them there, so that as they're setting up, that they are in accordance with some of the regulatory language that already exists and anything that might be coming up later on. So I think that that would be something else that the subcommittee could work on, to make sure that as this kind of starts happening in the next couple of months, that maybe we already have a leg up and not wait until, people start asking questions. We get started on it now.
So my caution would be is that we can look at an FAQ. We could provide guidance back to our statute, but we can't interpret.
Mhm.
When we interpret, we kind of start looking at, the regulation process. We need to do interpretation through regulation. What has happened in the past with the FAQs is we have really heavily relied on CANP. And so CANP is really where your organization goes to, for your licensee population goes to for direction. And what has happened historically is that CANP will take the list of questions that they're getting, they will write and draft a response, and then they send it to us to make sure that we take a look at it and say, yes, this is in alignment with our current statute and regs, there's no violation occurring, go forth. And then they post it, because for all transparency, there's not a lot of nurse practitioners that come to our website for direction. Most of the nurse practitioners in California go to CANP and they look for any kind of helpful tips and tools. If we were as a board to put out helpful tips and tools, that starts to look like we're asking or requiring that.
Mm,
And that's kind of a gray area, and we have to be very careful with that. And then
understood. I see your point.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry about that.
no,
Um,
that's fine. No, I think that that's a valid point.
Thank you. And then Beth, I did see that you had some input as well.
Thanks. I think I just want to highlight, maybe from my perspective, what I see as a bit of a risk. I'm not sure there's anything this committee can do about it, but in the 103A language, the attestation from the physician, it specifically says the physician attest to the completion of transition of practice is not required to verify confidence, clinical expertise, or any other standards related to the practice of the applicant, and shall only attest to the completion of the hours. And then there is nothing in there specific to how they would know those hours are done or have any verification. So for me, And maybe, you know, I've worked many years in environments where physicians do sign off on, you know, nurse practitioner competence. And I know that that's not what we've gone beyond that for these independent nurse practitioners, but it makes me a little nervous. It seems like very, very loose language and criteria. And I could see abuse, as we saw with, for example, IV hydration therapy, where you pay a physician somewhere to attest your hours, because there's basically no standards, for none at all, for this attestation from a doctor. So from a consumer protection point of view, I find that concerning.
Yeah, so Beth, we'll be discussing that actually in the next agenda item 10.0. And then we also have some conversation around kind of IV hydration clinics, et cetera, that is coming up in agenda item 11. And so hopefully we'll be able to address some of those concerns as we move towards that section.
Sounds great. And then Kevin and I, Dr. Maxwell and I we identified one more concern, that the bill states the patient must acknowledge and consent to any condition-specific outbound referral. And then I got your feedback that you don't see that language. So perhaps we misidentified that language. I don't know where we would have pulled it from, though. Maybe that's an offline conversation. But if there's somewhere that it states that the patient must acknowledge and consent to condition-specific referrals, our recommendation is that is very onerous and a standard that nurse practitioners being asked to have met that a doctor would not be. So, but I see that you said it's not in there. So Dr. Maxwell and I found it from somewhere. So we should have cited our source. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I wasn't able to find it in the AB 890 bill language as well as the updated bill language. It doesn't mean that it didn't at one point exist. It could have been in any of the versions that went through potentially. I was not able to find it.
Gotcha. Would it be possible when a new version comes through, would it be possible or acceptable for this group here to just get a text or an email or something that says new version posted here, just so when we do work as a subcommittee, we're looking at the correct and most accurate version? Because I don't think Dr. Maxwell and I were then.
So the versions that I'm referring to is the legislative process. And so that is outside of our board. And so what happens is there are various websites set up for that. The one that we use, I use more specifically in my role is Ledge. Here, I will screen share and let you guys kind of see it. So let me just pop up here and just kind of walk you through that really quick. Okay, so I just got a landing page up right now. And so then you'll see when I type this in, it is, whoops, ledgeinfo.legislator.ca.gov. That's where I go to, and this is where I kind of look at all mine. This is kind of also where I screen shared and showed the various forms and stuff that you can do. And then if there is a bill or anything that you are following, there are resources here across the top where you can do favorites and subscriptions, and you register, you log in, and you can put in stuff that you want to follow. They send an email out whenever there's any change. So it's done through this website. It's not done through us. And so depending on what you're looking at, you know, you could type in any specific kind of law that you might see here that you want to find. You can go back various years and look at it. You can do a keyword quote section here. So there's a lot that you can do to look and set yourself up, and they'll send email reminders to you when every single one is done. One of the things that I learned very early on when I took the EO position, which again, I did not know as a licensee prior to that, is the bill that is introduced is never going to be what is signed into law at the end. I would get very excited about bill language that was introduced in February and say, yes, it nails it. It's everything that we need. And then I'm like, what happened in that bill? It doesn't even exist anymore. The bill could die. It could be a gut and amend, which means none of the language that it was introduced in even exist anymore. Or it could take on a whole new meaning, have so many alterations that it's very difficult. So we in the BRN realm, we don't do any work on a bill on implementation until it is signed. When it is chaptered, signed, however you want to reference that, when it is chaptered, we know the language that we have in front of us, and that is the language that we work towards implementing in January.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Thank you. Sam.
Oh, I was just gonna make a comment for Betha. That website is fantastic. I use it. I have a login. You know, like right now, like EO Melby was saying, as the bill is going through the process, it will give you a lot of updates and alerts and emails so that you don't have to go searching for it if you sign up for that particular website. But then once it becomes a bill and it becomes law, then the BRN is then involved. But as it's processing through, they just kind of keep up and give position statements, I guess. Is the
Thank you
best
so
way.
much. If you were able to email that to our team, that link, maybe that'd be awesome. I didn't quite catch it as you were showing it. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Very helpful.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm going to be smarter now.
Having the appropriate tools and resources always help. Always. Yeah.
Okay, and the last subcommittee is myself and Sally. I'm going to let Sally talk and present our presentation for information that we found.
Sure, thank you. As you can see, the some of the datas that are printed out, there's roughly about 549,000 RNs, so over 500,000, out of which 43,800 are nurse practitioner, which is basically 9.72%. Of RNs are nurse practitioners. In terms of master prepared nurse practitioners are the fastest growing compared to the nurse anesthetist and the midwife. But when we look at in terms of trends through the years, despite, for example, I mean, when we're talking about 103, so far, like I said, there's 43,800 nurse practitioner. There's only been approved 3,673. So only a small portion, 8%, out of state of California currently are 103 NPs. However, there are applications are denied, and there's about 4,052 applicants are denied for various reasons. When we take a look at in terms of the overall basically disciplinary actions, we make up about 0.12%. So very, very small. Often when we look of all the trajectories, certain years it goes up and down, but nothing is alarming. So the most common discipline type is the probation. And so very, very, very little. And then so followed by that often is you kind of have some wiggly line throughout when I charted it, but mostly in terms of discipline is it's probation. It's and then followed by public reproval. So that's, so even, like I said, I don't think we're seeing a whole lot of 103 in terms of how to interpret the data, because we comprise a very small amount of nurse practitioner now. And of course, 104 is not eligible, or we don't get 104 until 2026. Does anybody have any question?
Sally, I did want to make one statement about the amount of applications, the 4,000. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And EO Melby, correct me if I'm wrong. A large portion of those people who were denied was from the very beginning before the law, before the attestation and all that additional information changed with the new law SB 1451. We had a large amount of adult nurse practitioners who applied, but at that time did not meet the qualifications due to their certification being sunset. And so some of that, I feel like, and if I'm wrong, EO Melby, please correct me, but a lot of it had to do with the actual applicants and what certification they actually held at that time, and they did not qualify. So I think when people hear that number, they're like, oh, there was a large amount of people that did not meet the qualifications. But I think it was just the particular time, and now we're at a different time. EO
There is
Melby, is
some
that
to
fair?
that. Yeah, there is
Mhm.
some to that. So when AB 890 was passed, the retired or legacy national certifications were not included. And so if they applied with a retired or legacy national certification, they didn't meet qualifications. And so we were not able to grant them to move to 103. However, it's truly what we worked with the most on our end is because we were requiring the 103 at that point to be separate, you had to have a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner 103. If you had a family nurse practitioner, you had to do a separate family nurse practitioner 103. If you had a women's health nurse practitioner, you had to do a separate application for a women's health nurse practitioner 103. What occurred is people were going through and applying for all of them, or applying for one that they didn't have a national certification in. So it was kind of operator error. And so we were getting a lot of applications that truly didn't make a lot of sense. That is one of the issues that we work with the Breeze is our system, and it's not always intuitive. And then kind of the process for it is kind of, you have to read everything and understand what you're moving forward with onto the next screen. And a lot of people were just clicking yes, 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 and they weren't taking the time to read the questions that were actually being asked. So although we did have some legacy and retired applicants out there that were not able to complete the process, there was a lot of user error process. And so we really trying to put clear direction on there, really trying to give that kind of feedback and allow them to go back and resubmit. The good thing is when they're going for the 103 or the 104, it is free. They don't have to repay when they do the application process. And so they are able to go through and address any errors that may have occurred the first time they submitted the application.
Thank you for that clarification. I think
Thank you.
also when we're looking at the discipline numbers that my partner so eloquently presented, thank you, Sally. I know probably the next question is likely going to be how many of these were 103 MPs, and I think that we're still trying to work out a mechanism for that.
I think the
To
last
see,
time we
yeah,
looked, there was none.
None.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah, and
last time
so
we looked is there was no 103s that had been disciplined. We are able to look at that on a manual basis right now. And
Mhm.
so there was a time when I think we had a meeting set up to have a discussion with maybe some legislative staff, and we looked to see if there were any specific 103s, and there weren't at that point. So, and we don't expect to. It didn't change the 103 scope of practice at all. Right.
Mhm.
So if we wouldn't see an increase, what AB 890 did is said you don't have to work under standardized procedures, but you still have to work within a group setting
Mhm.
with at least one physician and surgeon. So it didn't expand the scope. It just kind of changed that supervisory requirement, but still made you work within an organization with a physician or surgeon. So that kind of safety net was kind of built into the bill. So we don't expect to see any increased disciplinary issues. With the 104, that might be where we see an increase potentially, but we just don't know what that's going to look like yet. And they don't exist until January anyways.
Mhm.
correct.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I don't think it's going to be again, because it doesn't expand your scope of practice, right? It's not changing it. So I don't see that that's going to be an issue. What I think more is going to be the issue is when we start to discuss agenda item 11 and we talk about the IB and the compounding. And I think it's going to be an education issue.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree. I don't foresee 103 or 104 with trending increase at all. And if
No.
you even look at in 2025, I mean, the year hasn't ended, but we're like, 0.12%. And in the past, we're about 0.20 to 0.19. So actually, we're seeing, probably less, right? Towards less. But regardless, it's not statistically significant anyway for us to go either way.
It's not. And I think we'll end probably at the same percentage that we always do.
Mm-hmm.
The nurse practitioner discipline statistics, as you can see on the percent below, have stayed consistent for many years.
Correct. Opening it up to the committee for questions or comments regarding the discipline report.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, yeah, we're not there for 104 and how that's going to, I think I tried to explain this last time of my concern that 104s, say they're nationally certified in pediatrics, and they go on and decide once they get 104 and they've been practicing in pediatrics and they decide to do straight adults. Or the person that, if you're a rheumatology and you decide to practice rheumatology as a 104, when physicians require a fellowship on top of that. Now, yeah, we're not into credentialing or seeing what their, what is it? I guess it's credentialing. How do we, I guess I would like to see that when the 104s come in, that we get an idea how many people are going into the field that they actually did their 103s. Because we've kind of put family medicine as a big group, because they do a lot. But for example, I don't do OB. I could. But does that mean that tomorrow I should be OB? No, I couldn't be OB. I'd have to go do a fellowship to do OB. So how do we do that with nurse practitioners so they are aligned with what's a requirement for anybody, for example, that does rheumatology? How do we assess that, or do we, or is it not our role? But then we are, at the very least, it would be good to have statistics of what do they go in. They were pediatric, but they went into ICU or critical care.
So it seems like you have kind of two questions, so I want to address both.
Go ahead.
The first one that you mentioned is, can we look to see if the 104 goes into what they were practicing as a 103? No. With the bill that just passed, the updated language is, as a 103, you're not limited to your national certification. You can work as a 103 as long as you're competent, and that has no influence on what you do when you practice as a 104. You just have to be able to work in your competence area as a 103 in a group setting with at least one physician or surgeon. And so it is purely competency based. That was removed. We had that set up previously in our regulations, but with the bill that created new statutory language, that statutory language supersedes. And so that is the one we have to defer to. We have no option as the Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee to say you want to do it differently. That was actually stricken and removed from us. So we cannot look at that and make a determination on that. When you're asking about whether or not a pediatric nurse can practice as a 104 in an area outside of their education, training, and national certification, no, they cannot. That is protected in law. 2837.104 C states a nurse practitioner authorized to practice pursuant to this section shall comply with all of the following. 1, the nurse practitioner, consistent with applicable standards of care, shall not practice beyond the scope of their clinical and professional education and training, including specific areas of concentration, and shall only practice within the limits of their knowledge and expertise and national certification. So the pediatric one is clear. Peds to peds, that's where you have to be. Women's health to women's health, that's where you have to be. Psych to psych, it's where you have to be. What becomes more of that gray area that seems to be where you're kind of focused and concerned, Dr. Espinosa, is your adult Jerry, your family nurse practitioner. Can they go into a more specialized area? Yes, they can, as long as it is within the population focus that their national certification is. Can they have a subspecialty within that? Yes, they can. Those subspecialties are not monitored by us. We only monitor at the population focus, and that is the categories that are listed in 1481, I believe, in our California Code of Regulations. And that is your adult Jerry, acute and primary, your pediatric acute and primary, your women's health, your family nurse, etc.
Okay, so the one that's more is a broader range is the geriatric family sections, and I think you said one other one. So how do we know so if they go into private practice, there's no way that you know if they were trained in that area, right? So in pediatrics you can't, and you said in psych you can't, but in family medicine, because it can encompass a wide range of specialties.
I mean, their family nurse practitioner national certification says that they are competent. And that was something that our Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, did an extensive review, and we had to wait for the implementation of the transition to practice based on the outcome of that study. And that study went and looked at all of the current national certification exams and looked at that content to see if that was something that would show that they were educated, trained, and competent to work independently as, and it was determined by the Office of Professional Examination Services that it was. Within those recommendations, and all of this information is on our website, there was recommendations that potentially we ask for additional continuing education requirements. We haven't pursued that as a board yet, but that could be, in the physician license renewal, you guys are required to have 45 units every 2 years. Our NPs are required 30, so we may look at potentially doing that. That was a recommendation that came out from that exam review. But that exam review, Dr. Espinosa, did show that if they were able to pass those national certifying exams in those areas, that they were competent for the information within that.
Right, but the information within that probably didn't talk about working independently as a rheumatologist. Are they able to practice rheumatology? Yes, they can. But can they practice completely alone? You're asking for them to have less time in rheumatology than a rheumatologist would, a MD rheumatologist.
There are referral plans, Dr. Espinosa, at that point, okay. I don't know that this is the place where we need to have these in-depth conversations. I'd be happy to meet with you offline and really kind of go into this, okay, so that I can have those conversations with you. But our nurse practitioners are required to have a plan for referral of complex medical cases. In any time the situation goes beyond the competence, the scope of practice, or the experience of the nurse practitioner, they must refer them out. whenever the patient's condition fails to respond to or the patient is acutely decompensating in a manner that is not consistent with the progression of the disease or the corresponding treatment plan, they must refer out. Any patient that has a rare condition, they must refer out. Any patient's condition that doesn't fit the commonly accepted diagnostic pattern for a disease or disorder, they must refer out. And all emergency situations after initial stabilization care has been started, they must refer out. So all of these kind of concerns that you're having that they practice beyond their competence, they can't. They are specifically limited to their competence, their scope of practice, and their experiences as a nurse practitioner. And any of those off kind of examples that you're using, they must refer out. And my just looking at the track record, that's something that's commonly done already. Again, I've shared that it didn't change the nurse practitioner scope of practice in any way. I do not believe that our nurse practitioners are going to all of a sudden start practicing outside of their scope when they've never done that before.
But it is in their scope to a limit, like you said, then they make a referral. But
it is, and that's the scope, and they will do that. That is what they're held to.
So, okay, so then a nurse practitioner, as a family medicine doctor, cannot open a shingle that says, I'm a rheumatologist.
No, but they can say that they're a family nurse practitioner that specializes in rheumatology.
Okay.
Absolutely, they can. But they would not say, I'm a rheumatologist. No,
Okay.
that would be beyond.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
I think that it's important to state that the expectation and what you were saying, E.O. Melby, as far as the standard of practice for nurse practitioners currently, as it relates to referral, has not changed. The expectation has not changed as it relates to practice and referral of patients out who are having complex, not responding to traditional therapies, anything that someone, like this is a standard of practice currently for nurse practitioners prior to AB 890, after AB 890, and as we move forward. This is the standard of practice. And so I think I understand the concern as it relates to very specialized things such as like rheumatology. But I think there's a lot of FNPs that specialize in cardiology who are well suited and have been doing it for over 25 years. So I think that is those specialty things like you're talking about, Dr. Espinosa, like rheumatology, where people are highly and extensively trained in those things. Most nurse practitioners who would specialize in that have the same or have had some experience in it. And I don't see someone going to open a shingle for rheumatology, but I could be wrong. So, but
Yeah,
that's where we are looking.
And honestly, I mean, this is the perfect venue to have these conversations, right?
Mhm.
This is where we can provide the education, the direction, because these are concerns that are being brought to physician
course.
representatives as well as our nurse practitioner and public member representatives. And so to have these conversations, to have these meetings that are recorded, something you can refer back to, the meeting minutes, etc. This is the right place to have those conversations. And so to get that information out via education is always welcome and promising. I don't foresee or anticipate any increased discipline. We will be watching this and reporting it out. And so at this point, I would actually like to think as this being information only around these subcommittees that we could go out to public comment if that is something that you want to do, Sam.
Yes. Is there any other comments from the committee members at this time? Okay, hearing none, moderator, please open us for public comment.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing it in the question box. I would like to make a comment. Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, I would like to make a comment. Committee Chair Gamble Spar, there are no public requests or comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Okay, and I think that concludes our information only as it relates to our subcommittee reports. Our last agenda item is currently agenda item 11. Oh wait, nope, I'm skipping. I'm on 10.
We're on agenda item 10.
I'm on
Yep.
10. This
That's
is in
okay.
addition. Listen, my apologies. This is an information only regarding the transition to practice attestation requirements, which has come up on several occasions during our discussion today. EO Melby will provide us with information as it relates to Business Profession Codes 2837.103A.
Thank you. And so I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull that section up so we can just have it on the screen up here for everybody to see. And so when this was going through the legislative process, there was a lot of feedback provided by various stakeholders, and there was a lot of concerns, and Reza, myself, various people within CANP were really providing as much education as we could on what these attestations requirements were. We were talking about how they are not required to do an attestation for competency, but I don't think that the stakeholders that were directly affected by that truly understood that. And so what was occurring per the feedback that we were receiving was that physicians and qualified NPs providing the attestation were not getting the attestation because they were worried about what their legal ramifications potentially would. So this was added in. And so right here, this talks specifically about the attestation for the transition to practice. And so it does specifically state that they have completed a transition to practice in California of a minimum of 3 full-time equivalent years of practice or 4,600 hours, that the nurse practitioner has been practicing as a nurse practitioner in direct patient care for a minimum of 3 full-time equivalent years or 4,600 hours within the last 5 years, as indicated on the application, may be deemed to have satisfied this requirement. For purposes of this subparagraph, proof of completion of one transition to practice shall be provided to the board. That is an update, or if you guys remember, we had, as I shared on the application process, we would have to do several transition to practices based on the various areas that they were doing their national certification in. But it is proof of completion of one transition to practice shall be provided to the board on a form prescribed by the board as an attestation from either a licensed physician and surgeon, a certified nurse practitioner practicing pursuant to this section, or a certified nurse practitioner practice pursuant to section 2837.104. So what that means is a physician surgeon, a 103 or a 104 NP can provide the attestation. 2 is mentioned, a licensed physician or a licensed physician or surgeon or a certified nurse practitioner who attests to the completion of the transition of practice is not required to specialize in the same category as the applicant pursuant to section 2836. Remembering that 2 was something that we wrote into the regulations based on the feedback from the Nurse Practitioner Advisory Committee, you guys. And on that feedback, you thought that an example would be a pediatrician would attest to the competency of a pediatric nurse practitioner who completed their transition to practice direct patient care hours in pediatrics. That was removed and is no longer a requirement. Then Roman numeral 3 says a licensed physician and surgeon or certified nurse practitioner practicing pursuant to this section or the 104 who attests to the completion of a transition to practice is not required to verify competence. They're not required to verify clinical expertise or any other standards related to the practice of the applicant, and shall only attest to the completion of the transition to practice as defined at 2837.101 If I scroll up, 3827-101 says that transition of practice means additional clinical experience and mentorship provided to prepare the NP to practice independently. The transition of practice includes, but is not limited to, managing a panel of patients, working in a complex healthcare setting, interpersonal communication, interpersonal collaboration, and team-based care, professionalism, and business management of a practice. And then it did require us to define the minimum standards. We did. However, again, it came in and was amended to say that clinical practice shall not be limited to the experience in a single category. That is something that we, again, had to have that corrected because that is something we put in regs. And that the clinical experience may include experience obtained before January 1, 2021, but clinical experience must be obtained after the person is certified the board as a nurse practitioner. That shall not be included. So what that means is when they get licensed or certified here in California, any of that experience counts. If they're trying to bring it in through reciprocity or some other means throughout the other states, that is not included. So then we go down to the legal kind of aspect on Roman numeral 4, where it says a licensed physician surgeon or a certified nurse practitioner practicing pursuant to this section or section 104 who attests to the completion of the transition of practice shall not be subject to civil, criminal, administrative, disciplinary, employment, credentialing, professional discipline, contractual liability, or med staff action, sanction, or penalty, or other liability for providing an attestation or refusing to provide an attestation pursuant to this section. And this is where we had asked this to be added, unless the attestation was produced fraudulently. And so that is the only thing that we as a board are able to look into, is if we were to receive a complaint that said somebody lied and this didn't really happen and they signed their name to it. But other than that, it has removed all liability and has removed the requirements to do any kind of validation of competency or any kind of clinical expertise, and has greatly kind of stripped down those requirements for the attestation. That again is beyond something that we have any control over. Our board, when this was brought in front of our board, basically said, and I won't be able to quote it specifically, but our board president made a comment that there's really nothing left for the BRN to check. So requiring this attestation without, some of the limitations that we had put on really did not kind of hold the same meaning, according to our board. And so they did have that conversation around that. However, with the ability to investigate any complaints on fraudulent activity around the attestation, that does give us a clear, direct path forward.
Thank you, E.O. Melby. I guess at this time, is there anybody has questions, comments?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So does the person have to personally mentor the person
No.
that they're signing the attestation, or it could just be anyone within the practice or anyone outside the practice or anyone?
They are silent on those requirements. And so what it says is you just have to verify that hours are done. How you do that is determined through your process and whether or not you're willing to put your name on that. There may be providers that are not willing to sign off if they can't get some specific information. There may be other providers that say, you know what, I'm able to verify it by looking at this item, this item, this item. It's not prescriptive by us. We tried to be pretty prescriptive on the regulatory language when the 101 transition to practice subcommittee met and we did the regulations. But when we did that, those were stripped out through the statutory process, and statute will supersede regulation always.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Sally, go for it.
So how about geographically? Let's say if I'm a Northern California nurse practitioner can I sign on Southern California? Does the geographic matters?
No, it does not.
Okay.
And there could be telehealth agreements there. I mean, there's nothing that limits you to a location of practice. You're licensed to practice within the entire state of California. So there is not a geographic limitation at all. Again, you're just attesting to the hours being completed that meet the 101 requirements, and how that attestation is done by you guys verifying that that occurs, whether you're a physician, a surgeon, a 103 or 104, that is something that you guys would have to speak to. If we wanted to set specific requirements, we could go and do that in a regulation, but when we tried that, those regulations were were superseded by the statute. So I don't think that'd be something that I would recommend pursuing at this particular point. Again, because we're not seeing evidence of public safety issues that need to be addressed by this.
Any other questions or comments for EO Melby? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to open it up. Oh, Dr. Ray, were you going to say something? Okay. Hearing nothing, I'm going to open it up for the moderator for public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing in the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you will have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired, and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Committee Chair Gambles Farr, there are no public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, moderator, thank you. Okay, now we're on agenda item 11. We're going to talk about the discussion of statutory limitations preventing RNs and advanced practice nurses from independently compounding medications. I'm going to turn this over to EO Melby for the discussion as it relates to these statutory limitations.
Okay, so this is, I believe this is going to be a very difficult conversation to start. I do anticipate that there's going to be a lot of education that's going to have to come out around this. We do have a task force in place with the Department of Consumer Affairs to talk about these various compounding issues. We work really closely with the Pharmacy Board. The Pharmacy Board has the statutory authority to inspect facilities. When they have been going out and inspecting facilities, they have asked some of them to show where they compound medication. And we have had several of our licensees willingly show them where they're compounding medications. They believe that what they're doing is within their scope of practice. We really have to come out strong on this to really make sure that our nurses and advanced practice nurses understand what compounding is. Our education institutions, both pre-licensure and advanced practice, will probably need to really make it a point to update and highlight this information on what is truly required within law. I was educated as a nurse back in 1998, 99. I can age myself right here. And in that education, compounding wasn't specifically spelled out what it was. And we commonly would take a vial of medication and inject it into an IV bag as a routine process. Although we may be competent to do that, we are not allowed to do that in our state under law. So there is a lot of education that needs to come out around that. If an example, you know, as a labor and delivery nurse, is we used to take 20 units of Pitocin and inject it into an 1,000 milliliter IV bag. That's not something that we can do. That is considered compounding. If I have an antibiotic and it says on the label, it says to reconstitute with 50 milliliters of normal saline, great, fantastic. I am admixing, I am following the label, and I can do that, and I could deliver that medication. That is within our scope of practice. The reason this becomes a issue around conversation that we have to start here in our advisory committee, and we have to make sure it gets out to the California Association of Nurse Practitioners, and that we have to get it out to the rest of our licensees, is we have several RNs, several nurse practitioners that are working in IV hydration clinics. And doing all sorts of IV hydration. They cannot, under any circumstances, mix a bag of vitamins, pull from vials, and put them into IV solutions. We are hearing repeatedly that this is what is occurring. If somebody comes in and says, I have a headache and I have insomnia, they go to a policy that says if they complain about this, add these 2 vitamins to this bag, inject it in, mix it up, hang it, and infuse it. That is something an RN and an advanced practice RN cannot do. And that has not been made clear. We've had several legal counsels call in and ask questions, and we've had to provide guidance. And one of the legal council members, when we provided this guidance, made a statement that said, you realize there's no IV therapy clinics out there that are following this. And in fact, with the information that you said, it looks like all of us out here are practicing illegally. We truly hope that's not the case and that he was just being flippant when he said that. But there is a possibility that is something that our nurses don't understand what compounding is. And so in Business Professions Code 2725.1, and I'm going to screen share here and put this up so that you guys can see that this is our law, and it is in black and white and very, very clear in black and white. Are you able to see this here?
Very light.
Very light. Okay, I'm not sure.
I can't see. What's the number again?
It is Business Professions Code 2725.1. And it is B. And I'm going to highlight it here. And it says no registered nurse shall compound drugs. And it's very, very clear. Understanding that our advanced practice nurses are licensed as a registered nurse. Okay. According to pharmacy law states that a compounding pharmacist or a physician are the only people that are allowed to compound in the state of California. So with that, we're really trying to get the information out. There is a section in the USPS that talks about compounding. And then we also have a section under pharmacy law that further defines that. And in the USPS, there is talk about emergent or urgent use. And that emergent or urgent use does allow for an RN to compound under specific guidelines. And they can compound up to 3 sterile solutions, one of them being the IV, and then 2 additives to that IV. Our pharmacy law then further defines that as that has to be administered to a specific patient, one specific patient, within 4 hours of it being admixtured, of being compounded, and must be life or limb sparing. There is no IV therapy clinic that should be providing a service that is life or limb sparing. So the IV hydration clinics that are really prevalent throughout California, if they do not have a physician or a compounding pharmacy making the IV bags that are being delivered to a specific patient, they are in violation of our Nurse Practice Act, and it is not within their scope of practice. And we believe that that is happening in a lot of areas. Those IVs that are compounded by a physician and surgeon or compounded by a compounding pharmacy must have a label that identifies the patient, the specific patient, and what is in that bag. If an RN or an APRN is in a clinic and they do not have a physician compound that, or it doesn't come from a compounding pharmacy where it was ordered in advance and delivered for that patient. So what occurs is someone comes in and they get an IV that is for a hangover, and that nurse goes into the med room and pulls a couple vials, injects it into that bag, mixes it up and hangs it. That nurse is compounding. It is not covered within that emergent or urgent usage, and they are in violation of their scope of practice. This happens in standalone retail and mobile facilities, and med spas, and holistic medicine and functional integrative naturopathic medicine providers. We've seen it in private practice facilities, in chiropractor facilities, in physiotherapists and wellness gyms. We've seen it in tanning salons. We've seen it with barbering and cosmetology. Those are not something that are supported. I want to share one slide of a presentation that I attended that was given on a national level. And you can see why this has really come onto the radar here in California on whether or not our RNs and advanced practice RNs are practicing within their scope. And you could see here on the bottom of the screen here, there's a guidance on what the colors mean. And you can see that the N means there's over 500 practices, and that is Black, and that's where we are. We are the state with the most IV hydration clinics, IV therapy clinics that are out there. They are popping up. And, like I said at the beginning of this presentation, it's not that we as RNs, we're not taught how to pull up a vial of medication and inject it into an IV bag. We were absolutely taught to do that. So it's not that we even believe that we're not competent, because we are absolutely competent to do that. That is not allowed. We are not allowed to compound. That is considered compounding. That is against the law, and not just California law. And so really trying to get that information out on what that means. And so does it mean that these IV hydration clinics need to cease to exist? No, it doesn't mean they need to cease to exist. It means that the medications that are provided, those IV bags, need to come from either a physician or surgeon that is on-site compounding, or it needs to be pre-ordered in advance that is patient specific, that allows for those items to be compounded by a compounding pharmacy. What it does do is change the way that these areas are set up. any of these employment areas or business areas and opportunities are there. We have a society that I want this addressed today and now. So I'm going to randomly show up at 2:00 on a Friday, and I'm going to get IV therapy, hydration therapy done because I have a big competition weekend ahead of me where I need to be at my peak physical performance. And I'm going to show up at 2:00 and I expect that that's going to be done. If there's not a physician and surgeon on site compounding that medication, that will have to stop. You will have to have an appointment in advance. You will have to get an order in advance. You would have to have a compounding pharmacy make the medication, mix the IV bag in advance, and then have that delivered to the area where you are seeking that care, inclusive of physician supervision in an approved healthcare facility. There must be good faith examinations done, etc. There are policies for this to continue, but the way that this industry is set up right now in California, it is not operating under the current scope of practice, is what we're hearing. So we're doing an extensive outreach to provide education so that the people that own and operate these businesses are able to make the necessary adjustments to their practice and come into alignment with the letter of the law. Any questions from the committee at this point? Any further discussions? I'm opening a can of worms here. It's going to cause a lot of concern and issues, we know, but I think there's just been a lot of drift and misinformation out there, and large profitable companies that are saying, holding conferences and seminars that says, be your own boss. Let's do this. And they get them set up for that. And the nurse or the advanced practice RN is not aware that they are not working within their scope of practice. And they take the fall. So when a complaint comes, it's not the large company that's held the conference that said, do this. It's the RN or advanced practice RN that's doing it that gets the disciplinary hit.
I have a question.
Yes.
Any talk of a legislative fix to change this, or is it more of a national thing? It can't be done state of California.
Yeah, the USPS is a national, it's a federal process. It's not California specific. I don't see a legislative fix on the horizon. I think it really just is a business or a corporation fix where you see the person in advance, get a good faith exam, order it, and have a compounding pharmacy deliver, or you employ a physician and surgeon that is able to compound on site.
I have a question. So then, because
Yes.
the compounding, it's versus a reconstitution.
Yes.
So can you delineate, like, for example, you like Botox, you put in normal salines, and that's reconstitution, right? So in theory, couldn't in the future where they make vitamins where they can be reconstituted versus compounding?
Potentially. Yes, that is a possibility. So again, what you're referring to, Sally, is a reconstitution or the admixing. That is, it has to follow the label on the vial.
Yeah. So
And
really,
an RN can do that. That is within the scope of practice. And so that's why you'll see a lot of those like bags where it has the antibiotic, and you pop it together and you squeeze and you shake it and you go. That's completely within the limits that an RN can do. And so, or an APRN. So if there are specific instances that this is something that it becomes the way that that medication is made at the pharmaceutical company, that's the thing. It has to be in its original container. And in that original container, it must have directions for administering, and we can follow those as an RN because that becomes the admixing or the reconstitution. When we pull that up and we inject it into another vial or mix it with something else, that is where the compounding starts. And that is what we're not allowed to do.
Hey, Lori.
Yes.
So I know we talked about this before. I think when we were discussing the planning for the meeting, and initially, a while back when this came up, we talked about, is there something the BRN can do to educate nurse practitioners and nurses, for that matter, in the state of California, maybe at the time of their licensure or during their, renewal of their licenses, require that they, complete like some educational module. I know we all have to do that kind of thing for our respective institutions. I mean, is that something that, at least on the California level, can be done? And I don't remember what your answer to that question was at the time.
So it was a couple ideas when he brought that up. And one is that we have a very close relationship with our pre-licensure nurse practitioner programs, as well as our pre-licensure nursing programs, as well as our nurse practitioner programs. And I think getting this educational information out to them that they can then incorporate it into their pharmacology courses, I think is going to be key in getting them before they graduate, so they understand what those limitations are. I think that's going to be our kind of first line. We also have a requirement for continuing education. If we were to make something specific in continuing education, we would have to do that either through the legislative process or the regulatory process. Again, that takes years to complete, but that's absolutely something that we can look at. But I think really what we're going to be able to kind of get the most impact the soonest is getting this out on social media, using word of mouth, getting our website updated, providing any kind of outreach. We do plan to send an email out to all of our licensing population that says, hey, you may not be aware of this, but please stop doing it. The problem is we send out communication, and nurses and APRNs don't read our communication. It goes to their junk mail, or it goes to an email that they've never used, that they only use for licensing every 2 years. And so then they'll check that every 2 years from now, that kind of thing. So it's really just going to be a multifaceted approach where we're just going to have to rely on getting the information out and hoping that we get the information out before additional patient death or patient injury occurs. There has been in other states times where injury and death has occurred related to the IV compounding problems that have included RNs and advanced practice RNs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can say that at the University of San Diego, we're planning to incorporate this into our transition to practice event that we do for our seniors in the springtime before they graduate.
Fantastic.
So at least we're trying to get that out there. Go Toreros.
Hey, also cover the corporate practice of medicine, please, so that we don't have individual RNs out there doing Botox clinics by themselves without a physician. That would be really, really great, because that would help with my disciplinary issues also. So just really getting that information out. I know that there's a lot of times that there's so much to cover in nursing school that sometimes things are not covered in a manner that it sticks. And so as we're seeing the increase in this nurse entrepreneurial role, they're kind of going off of word of mouth and not checking our statute or our scope of practice. And because that's something that they've always done or heard that they've done, or their preceptor said that they did, or a large corporation that has held a lot of conferences and made a ton of money by inviting nurses in and showing them how to start up, are making a lot of money on the nurses who are not aware of what our scope of practice is here in California. And again, the problem is we don't have the ability to go after those large corporations that are setting them up for failure. The person that's going to take the fall is the RN or the APRN when there's a scope of practice violation that is reported. Sam.
I think one of the most things that we need to talk about too is just understanding, like you were talking about, the entrepreneurial as more and more people are looking to go and do things like that, is to trust but verify all the information that they get. And the
Yes.
Nurse Practice Act is our playbook, and the standard and business professions codes are additionally things that people should know about before you even take that endeavor, because this is a patient safety issue first and foremost. And then, people work very, very hard to get into these spaces and get their licensing. And what a shame to not trust but verify something that's very
Yeah.
easily found. And so I think that that's something in addition that we need to get back to and focusing on is it's okay to listen to what other people have to say, trust, but always verify the information
Yeah.
that you're being given.
And IV therapy and administering medications is an RN scope of practice. I mean, it just seems like it's a no-brainer. Of course I could do it. I'm absolutely competent to do that. But there are other laws that influence our care, and the definition of compounding is one of them, and that is key. Is nurses cannot compound, and when you're not sure what that definition of compounding is, and is not following the directions on the vial, please continue to do it. Please continue to administer after you have followed the admixing requirements or adding the diluent or to it. Go for it, please do. But do not draw up a medication and inject it sterilely into another medication, which is an IV bag. Because that is compounding.
One thought I just had, I mean, I would never want to get the nurses in jeopardy, but mostly those sites have to have a supervising MD, I believe. Is there any chance that we could put the CMA having this education as well, having the CMA educate their physicians as to these requirements, because it's ultimately their license on the line as well when this happens. And I hate to put the nurse in the position where she's being held accountable, or he, and yet her job is dependent upon doing that, or she or his job is dependent upon doing what the doctor has set up as the protocol for that clinic. So just a thought that maybe the CMA could help us educate their own doctors.
Yeah, so our California Medical Board is aware of this as well. They're part of the task force, and there is a lot of information on their website, actually, that covers a lot of this information, that specifically covers med spas, IV. It covers Botox and injectables. It covers the corporate practice of medicine. That is all on the medical board's website, and that education is put out, and those physicians are held to that standard. We sometimes get joint investigations where a physician and an RN are both implicated. We can't defer to the physician only because the RN is involved and they are responsible for their scope of practice under their licensure, and so we do need to investigate and pursue, based on that investigation, any disciplinary processes that might need to be followed. It doesn't say that the physician is not going to be held accountable either, because that is underneath the medical board's purview. What happens commonly is that RNs go to RN board and RN does not go to med board. And so they don't see those specific standards. And so we're going to really do a concerted effort to update our website to put down what compounding is, and that a nurse and advanced practice nurse cannot do that, and really start to kind of clarify that. Go out social media messaging, hit our nursing academic partners, as well as getting messaging out to each one of our licensees, and hoping that through word of mouth and after all that stuff is done, that we can continue to get that word out, that they'll just have to change the business practice, but that is going to be required. And Sally, your suggestion is perfect. I'm sure some of our pharmaceutical agencies out there are already considering that, because that is what we saw happen, right? When we went from nurses where we would draw up different medications and inject directly into the IV bag, that's what we did. There was none of that issue. But when that compounding law changed, the pharmaceutical company stepped up. And so
Yeah.
hopefully the pharmaceutical companies will step up and change that so that it's change the way that they package and send their items out. But until that happens, compounding can only be done by a compounding pharmacist or a physician and surgeon.
I like to make a comment that knowing that there is a knowledge deficit out there, I hope when it comes to disciplinating these nurses and APN, that we do look through, with understanding that it was not the intention, but much more of a knowledge deficit, right? I know sometimes our regulations are kind of black and white, but I hope we're definitely, be a little bit more lenient than harsh.
Yeah, we definitely take that into consideration. And when our nurses go into probation, they are allowed to continue to practice. They are allowed to practice with oversight. And in that oversight, we also do assign coursework. And so if there is a knowledge deficit that is determined when the complaint is received and the investigation is done, coursework is assigned to address that knowledge deficit. And so they will have to do that. And so it is rare that our board will revoke a license. There has to be something pretty egregious for that to occur. Most of our nurses go through the probationary route. And while they're on probation, they're able to continue to work. They do have to have supervision and they do have to complete some coursework so that they can not have something like that happen practice related again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sam.
Okay, any other comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'm going to ask the moderator to open it to public comment, please.
We will be opening for public comment now. Please refer to the screen share for members of the public to see how they should type in their request for comment. I've activated the question and answer feature. Members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by typing into the question box, "I would like to make a comment." Please remember you'll have 2 minutes to make your comments. I will not give a reminder as your time approaches. I do not want to interrupt you nor cause you to lose your train of thought. I will mute your microphone and inform you that your time has expired and we'll move on to the next member of the public. I'll pause for a moment for members of the public to type in, "I would like to make a comment." Darcy Peterson would like to make a comment. 1 second, please. Darcy, a small button should have opened up that says unmute me. It might be behind all your other things that you have opened up.
Hello, can you hear me?
There you are. Perfect. Go for it.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yes, this is Darcy Peterson. So I just want to commend the board for addressing this issue. I know compounding has been a big thing lately. Even our big pharmacies, CVS, are not compounding unless they have a certain pharmacist. So I think a lot of nurses are not aware of that. And I know the board also was talking about, the CANP and how it has a lot of outreach. And I was just wondering if maybe that might be another way to reach some of our people and let them know about this issue.
I think that's fantastic. And I know that there are some members of CANP on the WebEx right now. And hopefully that information does go back.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Committee Chair Gamble Spar, there are no other public requests for comments on the WebEx. We have no in-person representation in BRNHQ. Would you like me to close this window?
Yes, please.
Real quick, I had a comment. This is Reza.
Yes.
Just a brief thing on this topic, and it kind of touches a little bit on what Sally said and as well as something Samantha said earlier. And, in my very, very limited experience with this issue as it's kind of emerging, and first time it was really kind of crossed my desk, we had an instance in which a non-licensed individual, they were not a nurse nor physician or anything, and it almost seemed they were kind of the principal over this IV hydration business. And so there definitely can be involvement from people like that who are pushing the business and pushing the limits and probably pushing it beyond what is legal. And so unfortunately, we get RNs, they get brought into that type of business to go and do the actual work. So the comment is, I think, kind of a suggestion to anyone who might be listening that, on the one hand, to Sally's comment about, this being an emerging thing and a knowledge deficit, I would say that apart from just this limited context in general, with consideration of bringing discipline and then through the discipline process, there's always consideration given to the respondent's good faith or bad faith and their knowledge of it, and that plays into it. At the same time, on the flip side, ignorance of the law is never a defense to having committed a violation. We're all kind of, for better or worse, we're all charged with knowing what our obligations and responsibilities and limits are, and if not, educating ourselves on them. So the point, it sparked recollection of that incident in which a non-licensed individual was utilizing RNs to do this, and the RNs may have themselves been influenced or convinced or misled by this person. So and we might even have RNs who maybe are on probation and have a hard time finding a job and are tempted to go and do something like this because it's an opportunity to work. So all of that is to say, do your homework. I think the board has a lot of work cut out for it to get the education out there, and hopefully our partners with the associations and all the good suggestions that have been brought forth, that they'll also be involved and active in getting the information out there. Meanwhile, just a little word of caution and admonition to our licensees that at the end of the day, do your due diligence, and if somebody is presenting this as the opportunity of a lifetime, take it with a grain of salt and do your own homework. That's all.
Thank you for that, Reza. And that is more what we're hearing than not, is you will have a non-nurse or potentially another type of licensee, maybe located out of state or in state, that says, hey, this is a great way to be your own boss. And you just travel to these different patients' houses and you administer these IVs in the comfort of their home. You set your own hours, you set your own requirements, and you do that. Or you open up these really kind of multiple locations of these kind of retail places where you can just walk in off the street and you can get an IV. You might, as an RN, be doing everything that you think that you're doing within your competency, but it's not allowable. It's not protected in our law. And so you might be doing everything aseptically or sterilely. You might store all your medications appropriately. You might have a physician that is overseeing your practice, or all of that kind of stuff set up. You could have standardized procedures in place. You can have all of that. But as soon as you start mixing your medication or compounding your medication, you are in violation of your scope of practice. And so when you have these algorithms that we see commonly, and Reza, you nailed it. We see this a lot with our probationary nurses. It's really what kind of brought it to my attention the most, is we have people submitting these jobs for approval to work while they're in probation. We ask them for who your supervising physician is, and we ask for your copy of your standardized procedures. And as soon as we receive them, we realize that is not following our law. And so it is very, very common that this occurs. And again, it's not that these businesses can't exist. They need to exist underneath a different structure to accommodate the law. And that is, a physician or surgeon must be on site to compound immediate use medication, or if a good faith exam is done and a patient specific order is turned into a compounding pharmacy or by a compounding pharmacist, that person can that person can compound that medication and then deliver it to that single patient once it is compounded. What we have seen as well, and it's been reported to us, is you might have several IV bags pre-made with various vitamins and amino acids and injectables in there. They're not labeled for patient specific use. It wasn't done for a specific patient, and compounding has to be done for a specific patient. So let's get the word out, guys. Let's get this out. Let's get that education out, because I don't want to discipline everybody. I think that that is just illogical and it's wrong. And I don't want to see that happening, because I do not believe that our nurses and our APRNs are doing this knowing that they're violating the law. So we need to get that information out. We need to get that direction out, and hopefully they can find a path so that they can continue to be in that nurse entrepreneur role. They can continue to set their own hours, but they have to do it within the confines of what our law requires.
Thank you, EO Melby and Reza and everybody on the committee, and for our person who posed the question. I'm sure with additional education, we will hopefully come to a conclusion for this. Okay, and so that is our last agenda item. We are now on agenda item 12. As we close, I want to remind everybody who's on the call that we do have a dedicated email for this committee. It's impact@dca.ca.gov. Our next meeting will be April 28th, 2026, unless it's deemed that we need to meet prior to that. And so, unless there is any other business to be discussed, there won't be any. And the time of adjournment is 15:47. Oh, Dr. Way, I'm sorry. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I'm just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. 15:47, time of adjournment. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.